Hello, everyone. We are here today to discuss the translation process of Papree Rahaman's Bayan. I am Rituparna Mukherjee. I am the chief editor, Antonym magazine, as well as a translator with the Antonym collections. Today, I am very fortunate to have with me Srimati Sukti Sarkar. She is a retired official from the Reserve Bank of India and has been working with us, the Antonym collections, for the last 3 years as a translator. So Shukti, I'll jump straight into the thick of things. Let us start with why you chose Bayan as your passion project.
Well, choosing Bayan to translate Bayan was actually an impulsive decision, and I just don't regret that. Papree Rahaman has done a fascinating job. This is not a literary work alone. It's a well-researched project, kind of a report with ample amount of field work tucked in regarding the life and times of the Jamdani weavers. So Jamdani is it's close to heart of every Bengali woman.
That's true,
Whoever,
yes.
Admires and appreciates wearing a sari. So it was when I completed the first draft, a strange kind of sense of belonging grew with the work. And it was like a mother and aunt trying to bring up a little child. So that was very challenging because the mother and aunt can be at loggerheads. But
Yes,
thankfully,
yes.
nothing of the kind really happened. And I had the opportunity of contacting, I still have, Papree on a daily basis through messenger chats, sometimes through calls, messenger phone calls. And there have been so many difficulties that had to be resolved with the consent and with discussions with the author. So that way the journey was and of course is interesting.
Yeah, so we'll come to the difficulties a little late, but I found this thing very interesting that you had developed a sense of belongingness. I can vouch for that because I have also recently translated a full work and I also found myself very associated with the work.
Yes.
Now, do you think that objective translation or disassociated translation can work? I mean, what I mean to say is, can you be distant from what you translate? And can that result in a good translation? And I'm completely asking for your own personal point of view.
My personal point of view is this. When I read Bayan for the first time, it was like just browsing through.
Yeah.
But only when I decided to translate it, that I scanned every sentence, literally dissected every sentence, picked up the words and weighed them and tried to reach the target language. The
Right.
journey wasn't easy at all. And while translating, I found that no dissociation is really possible.
Yeah.
I became more and more associated with it.
Yes.
And now I feel that writing the novel was not easy. And translating the novel isn't easy at all. It's perhaps more difficult.
Yes. Yes. Now, coming to that then, why do you find translating the novel more difficult than perhaps authoring it? Why would you say that?
Because when I'm reading it in the original language, Bengali here, it is communicating with me a lot of cultural landscape, lot of
Right.
history, lot of regionalism, and to transform it to the target language, English in this case, is certainly not easy. Because first thing I have to remember all through that the reader does not know Bengali, does not know the cultural contexts.
Right.
I have to assume that from the very beginning. So now the task becomes more difficult. Like, what words should I choose?
Right.
What syntax should I maintain? The first thumb rule is that I should be as faithful as possible to the author's text.
Absolutely.
But
yeah.
then, considering all these things, transforming it into or communicating it into a totally different language, I had to wade through a lot. I had to find out ways.
Yes, yes. So, if we were to talk about, almost make a list of the challenges that you faced, what would be on the top of the list? Like, which area or which part of the novel did you find especially challenging?
The most challenging portions were when I had to deal with tense.
Right.
Tense is very challenging because there are certain characters in the novel. I mean, Papree describes the character into events that the characters are involved in. But at the same time, the author has her own time scale in which she presents the characters. But the characters themselves are floating in and out of a strange time scale. Mulluk Chan, a particularly, interesting and very mysterious character, very senior weaver. He gives training to newcomers. So when he is talking or interacting with others around him, he is going back to his past, trying to predict the future or fathom the future.
Right.
And then he's occasionally communicating his fears, his beliefs, things which may not be correct to others, all the thought processes. So the time that he literally zigzags between so many time scales.
Right, so the time is very fluid and there's no definite temporality in the novel per se.
The fluidity, it is a kind of continuum, but one has to be so careful because one has to first of all understand, so this part is his thought. So the next part of the sentence is what he is afraid about.
Right.
So that entire thought process, that is the lyricality of the author's presentation, but it's also very difficult to translate because the flow of the two different languages are totally different.
So how did you mitigate this challenge? As in, one relating to time and tense, obviously, and another relating to the lyricality, as you mentioned. So how did you mitigate it?
I actually chose to remain in simple past tense.
Yeah.
That was rather easy, an easy approach.
It's easy for me too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as a translator, I felt that is the easiest route. But of course, I'm also waiting for the editor to come with all the scissors and blades and everything.
Yes.
Let's see how things turn out. But as an example, how the characters' interaction with the events and all the associations of things, all the complications, I should say, I think let us read out a bit from the original text and portions in which Mulluk Chan is focused on are the most difficult chapters.
Okay, let's find out then.
Of course, very interesting, but also very difficult.
Yes.
So let's go for some sample reading.
Yes.
বাঁশঝোপের ভিতর দিয়ে হাঁটতে হাঁটতে ভীষণ চমকে ওঠে সে। বাঁশপাতার বুক কাঁপিয়ে বয়ে যায় ভিজে হাওয়া। অদ্ভুত ধ্বনি তুলে নিমেষেই যেন সে হারিয়ে যায় কোথায়। এমন করুণ ধ্বনি মুল্লুক চান এই জীবনে শোনে নাই। কে কাঁদে অমন করে এত করুণ সুরে, আর কেনই বা কাঁদে সে? কেউ কাঁদে বলেই কি মেলা জল জমেছে হাওয়ায়? মুল্লুক চান কিন্তু জানে কে কাঁদে অমন করে, কাঁদে তার আয়রন ইচ্ছা। কতদিন ধরেই তো মুল্লুক চান তাকে কাঁদতে দেখেছে। পুড়ে কয়লা হয়ে যাওয়া কালো কিষ্টি চেহারা, নাকছাবিটা শুধু তেমনি আছে, উজ্জ্বল চকচকে দ্যুতিময়। কালো রং নাকের পাটাতনে সর্ষে ফুল নাকছাবিটা কি অসম্ভব সুন্দরী না দেখায়। মুল্লুকচাঁদ চোখ মেলে তাকাতে পর্যন্ত পারে না। তাকালে কেবল নাকছাবিটাই দেখে। কয়লা হয়ে যাওয়া মুখখানার দিকে তাকানোর সাহস তার হয় না। ওই মুখের দিকে কিভাবে তাকাবে সে? আয়রনেচ্ছা অবিরাম কেঁদে চলে। তার চোখের জলেই কি বুক ভার হয়ে থাকে বাতাসের। ফলে বাঁশবনে পাতা নড়ে উঠলেই আশ্চর্য ধ্বনি ওঠে। বগ্রাকুলের উত্তর দিকের বুইরা তালগাছ দুইটার মাথা নড়লেও সে ওই রকম ধ্বনিই শোনে। আশ্চর্য ধ্বনি। মুল্লুকচাঁদ বুঝতে পারে না আয়রনেচ্ছা কেন হঠাৎ কাঁদতে শুরু করে। বলা নাই কওয়া নাই শুরু হয় তার কান্না। মুল্লুকচাঁদের আজকাল পথ চলতেও ভয় করে। পথের সবটা জুড়ে আয়রনেচ্ছা ঠায় দাঁড়িয়ে থাকে। মাথায় লম্বা ঘোমটা টানা, শুধু নাকের ডগাটি কোনো মতে দেখা যায়, আর থেকে থেকে নাকছাবির ঝলকানি। আয়রনেচ্ছা কাছাকাছি এলেই চামড়া পোড়া গন্ধ বেরোয়, এমন উৎকট দুর্গন্ধ যে মুল্লুকচাঁদ বমি করে ফেলে। কিন্তু সে আয়রনেচ্ছাকে সরে দাঁড়াতে বলতে পারে না। আয়রনেচ্ছা যেন 2 হাত বাড়িয়ে তার গলা টিপে ধরেছে। ফলে মুল্লুকচাঁদের শ্বাস বন্ধ হয়ে আসে। তখন মোগরাকুলের জলপূর্ণ হাওয়া তাকে বাঁচিয়ে দেয়। ভেজা হাওয়া বুকের ভেতর পুড়ে মুল্লুকচাঁদ তখনকার মতো বেঁচে ওঠে। আয়রনেচ্ছার অত্যাচারে মুল্লুকচাঁদ অতিষ্ঠ, বিরক্ত। হায় আয়রন বিবি, তুমি কেন এই রকম রঙ্গ তামাশা করো? তোমার উদ্দেশ্য কি? মেলা বছর আগে পুইরা কয়লা হওয়া তুমি কিভাবে এখনো বাতাসে ভর দিয়া হাইটে যাও? তোমার ছাওয়াল পিয়ালের কথাও কি মনে পড়ে না? তাগো কাছে 2-1 ঘুরানি যাও, দেখা আহো তারা কে কেমতে আসে। তা না, খালি আমার লগে লগে ঘুরতে চাও কেন? এমন যন্ত্রণা তুমি আমারই দাও কেন? আর কাউরে কি চোখে দেখো না? না, আয়রনেচ্ছার মতিগতি বোঝা সত্যি দুষ্কর। অন্তত মুল্লুকচাঁদের কাছে তাই মনে হয়। কোনো কোনো দিন পাখির দঙ্গলের সঙ্গে আয়রনেচ্ছাও ওড়াউড়ি করে। মুল্লুকচাঁদ ভয়ে কুঁকড়ে থাকে। ওই রকম একটা বিশাল দেহকে সে শূন্যে ওরা দেখতে চায় না। ভয়ে এতটুকুন হয়ে সে কমলা সুন্দরীকে আঁকড়ে ধরে। কমলা সুন্দরী হয়তো তখন ঘুমে বিভোর। কমলা সুন্দরীর গতরে সেঁটে যেতেই সে পোড়া গন্ধ পায়। ইয়া মাবুদ, ইয়া আল্লাহ, এইরকম তো হওয়ার কথা নয়। বহুকাল থেকে পোড়া গন্ধ নিয়ে আয়রনেচ্ছাকেই সে কাছাকাছি দেখেছে। কমলা সুন্দরীর গতরেও ওই গন্ধ এলো কোত্থেকে?
Now I'll read the translation. Walking through the bamboo grove, he was startled. A damp breeze was blowing and it shook all the bamboo leaves. It made a strange sound and was soon lost in the wilderness. Mullukchand had never heard such a melancholic sound. Who wails with such pathos, and why? All the welled-up tears of an unknown sobbing soul must have saturated the air. Mullukchand, however, knows who wails this way, out of deep sorrow. It was his Ayronneccha. Since long, Mullukchand has seen her shedding tears, her features burnt black as coal. Only her nose stud remained the same, bright, shining, and radiant. The stud, shaped like a tiny mustard flower, looked incredibly beautiful on the dark skin of her nose. Mullukchand could not look at that face directly. His eyes were fixed on the nose stud. He lacked the courage to look at the face burnt to coal. How could he look at such a face? Ayronneccha sobbed interminably. Her tears made the wind heavy. As a result, the bamboo leaves seemingly trembled with a strange sound. Whenever the 2 old Pamira trees in the northern side of Mugrakul shook their heads, Mullukchand heard the same sound. He does not understand why Ayronneccha suddenly starts wailing. It begins without any rhyme or reason. Mullukchand is scared of walking on the roads. Ayronneccha stands still, on guard, along the entire path, head covered with a long veil, only the tip of her nose somehow visible. Her nose stud sparkled from time to time. When she came closer, there was a smell of burnt flesh. The terrible stench made Mullukchand vomit. But he could not tell Iron-Nicha to move aside. She seemed to extend both her hands to press tightly around his neck. Mulluk Chand was out of breath. At such times, the damp air of Mugrakul comes to his rescue. Mulluk Chand deeply breathes in the damp air and regains life for the time being. He feels tortured, exasperated, irritated by Iron-Nicha. "Hi, Iron baby, why do you play such pranks? What exactly is your intention? It's years since you were burned to coal. Why do you still walk in the air? Do you ever remember your children? You may go and visit them to find out how they are doing in life. But no, you simply want to go around with me. Why? Why do you cause so much pain to me? How come you never find anybody else?" It was indeed very difficult to predict Iron-Nicha's whereabouts. That's what Mulluk Chand thought. On some days, Iron-Nicha too flew about like these groups of birds. Mulluk Chand shivered in fear. He was reluctant to see her large body flying in the void. Like a frightened child, he held on to Kamala Sundari. Kamala Sundari was fast asleep. As he glued himself to her body, he began again to grow aware of the burnt smell. Ya Allah, this was not supposed to happen. Since long he sensed the smell when Iron-Nicha came close to him. But how could the same smell arise from Kamala Sundari's body?
ঘুমের ঘোরে কমলা সুন্দরী তখন চিত হয়ে শোয়। সে ফের পোড়া গন্ধ পায়। আয়রন-ইচ্ছার গতরের পোড়া গন্ধ নয়, মিষ্টি আলু পোড়া চেনা গন্ধ। এ গন্ধের কেমন যেন অন্যরকম স্বাদ। মুল্লুক চান মিষ্টি আলুর পোড়া গন্ধের ভিতর ঢুকে পড়লে তার বেশ আরাম হয়। এই গন্ধ যেন তার চেনা। গা সওয়া এই গন্ধে মুল্লুক চানের বমির উদ্রেক হয় না, গা ঘুলিয়ে ওঠে না, বরং তার চোখ জুড়ে নিদ নেমে আসে। মন ভোলানো গন্ধ নিয়ে মুল্লুক চান ঘুমের ভিতর ঢুকে পড়তে পড়তে ফের জেগে ওঠে। নিদ যাওয়া কমলা সুন্দরী আর তার পৈথানের কাছে বসে আয়রন-ইচ্ছা গুনগুনিয়ে কাঁদছে। আরে কামিনা মাগি, মর জ্বালা, তোর হইছেটা কি? সারাদিন দাবড়াইয়া বেড়াস, এই রাইতের বেলা একটু আরামের নিদ পারবো তাও হইবার নয়। ওই রে বজ্জাত মাগি, তোর হইছে কি? মুল্লুক চানের এই রকম গালাগালিতে কাজ হয় না। আয়রন-ইচ্ছা আরও জোরে জোরে কাঁদে। তার কান্না ঘরের ভিতর প্রচণ্ড শব্দে ছড়িয়ে পড়ে। তক্ষুনি কিনা পাখির দঙ্গল উড়তে শুরু করে। মুল্লুক চান কী করবে দিশা পায় না। দুই কানে হাত চাপা দিয়ে কান্না পাখনার ঝাপট থেকে উদ্ধার পেতে চায়, কিন্তু পারে না। কান্নার শব্দ ততক্ষণে ঘরের অন্ধকার ভেদ করে দুয়ারে ছড়িয়ে পড়েছে। দুয়ার ছাড়িয়ে ফিরোজাদের বাড়ি, সেইখান থেকে সবেদ আলী, মহিতন, পয়রন বিবির ঘর পেছনে ফেলে শীতলক্ষার জলে আছড়ে পড়েছে। আয়রন-ইচ্ছার কান্না শীতলক্ষায় পড়া মাত্রই জল ফুলে ওঠে। কতকালের রোষ চেপে রাখা শীতলক্ষা হঠাৎ ফুঁসে ওঠে। বিশাল বিশাল ঢেউ সাপের মতো ফনা দুলিয়ে নাচে, একসময় একে অপরের পিঠের ওপর ভেঙে পড়ে। ঢেউ ভেঙে পড়ার সঙ্গে সঙ্গে আয়রন-ইচ্ছার কান্না মুল্লুক চানের পৈথানে ফিরে যায়। মুল্লুক চানের মেজাজ এবার সত্যি সত্যি বিগড়ায়। কামিনা মাগি, বহুত সহ্য করছি, এইবার তোরে মজাটা দেখাই। ঘোর ঘুরটি আন্ধারের ভিতর মুল্লুক চান সাপের মাথা বাঁকানো লাঠি তালাশ করে। লাঠিটা পাওয়া মাত্রই আয়রন-ইচ্ছার মাথায় মারে এক বাড়ি। কাঠের চকির ওপর লাঠির বাড়ির বিকট শব্দ হয়। ফলে কমলা সুন্দরী জেগে ওঠে। কমলা সুন্দরী উঠে বসতে না বসতেই দ্বিতীয় বাড়ি পড়ে। ও মাগো, আমারে মাইরা ফেলাইলো গো, তোমরা কে কোথায় আসো গো? মুল্লুক চান ধন্দে পড়ে যায়। ইয়া আল্লাহ, আয়রন-ইচ্ছার গলার স্বর অন্যরকম শোনায় কেন? আর সে এত জোরে চিৎকারই বা করছে কেন? মুল্লুক চান এইবার বাড়ি মেরে বসে কমলা সুন্দরীর হাঁটুর ওপর। ভয়ানক যন্ত্রণায় জ্ঞান হারানোর আগে কমলা সুন্দরী চিৎকার করে ওঠে, তোমরা কে কোথায় আসো গো? বুইড়ার হাতেই আমি মরবার নাকছি গো। মুল্লুক চানের সামনে থেকে আয়রন-ইচ্ছা উধাও। পাখির দঙ্গলের ওড়াউড়িও নাই। আছে কমলা সুন্দরীর অজ্ঞান দেহ।
In her sleep, Kamala Sundari turned to her side. He inhaled a burnt smell once again. It wasn't the smell of Iron's burnt flesh, but the known scent of roasted sweet potato. This scent had a different flavor. Entering the fragrance of roasted sweet potato, Mulluk Chand reached his comfort zone. It was a familiar smell that never nauseated him, but made him sleepy. This addictive scent was leading Mulluk Chand to slumber, but he woke up with a jolt. Kamala Sundari was fast asleep, and near her feet sat a weeping Ironicha. Bloody mean woman! Get lost! What's wrong with you? You keep bullying everyone all through the day and don't let me sleep at night. Wicked whore, what are you up to? All these cuss words of Mulluk Chand yield no result. Ironicha keeps weeping louder. The increasing sound of her weeping crashed and spread all over the room, and immediately the flocks of birds began to fly. Mulluk Chand was utterly confused. He covered his ears with the palms of his hand to seek respite from the sound of sobbing and the fluttering of wings, but without success. The sound of sobbing had pierced the darkness of the room and spread out of the door. From the door, it reached Firoza's house, left the residence of Sabed Ali, Mohiton, Poiron Bibi behind, and exploded in the waters of Shitalaksha. At once, the Shitalaksha waters flared up. The all-enduring Shitalaksha suddenly burst with rage. Huge waves swayed like hooded snakes and came crashing down in a series of breakers. Just when the waves were breaking down, a sobbing Ironicha came back at Mulluk Chand's door. Mulluk Chand lost his temper. Mean woman, I've tolerated a lot. I'll teach you a lesson this time. In the depths of stark darkness, Mulluk Chand looked for his snake-headed stick. No sooner had he found it, he hit straight on Ironicha's head. The stick struck on the wooden cot with a terrible thud. It woke up Kamala Sundari. Before she could sit up, the stick struck for a second time. Oh ma, he's killing me! Where are all of you? Mulluk Chand was further confused. Ya Allah, why does Ironicha's voice sound different this time? And what makes her scream and shout? Mulluk Chand now struck on Kamala Sundari's knee. Before she lost her senses, Kamala Sundari cried out in terrible pain. Where are all of you? The old man is sure to kill me. Oh ma! Ironicha vanished from Mulluk Chand's sight. The fluttering of the flocks of birds had also stopped. Kamala Sundari lay unconscious. So, now that we have read a little bit of it, what I noticed in the reading was the author employs a lot of sensory elements in her work. So, how did you manage to convey or, translate this sensoriness, if I may call it that, to your translated work?
Actually, Papree Rahaman's narration communicates a lot of sensuality, particularly smell. There are certain distinct smells. For example, we find Mulluk Chand, he is very perturbed by the smell of burnt flesh.
Right.
Because Ironicha, his first wife, was killed when she got thunderstruck one evening after a storm. And actually, he cannot come out of the trauma.
Right.
So, a black, burnt figure that keeps on emanating the odor of burnt flesh haunts him for the rest of his life.
Right.
So that is something, and it happens so often that, and there are other instances, particularly the smell of dust. It indicates the element of dryness in the wind, really.
Right.
And dryness of the wind is something which the Jamdani weavers shun, because to spin yarn or thread from futi karpash, a particular variety of cotton. In order to make the yarn, a lot of moisture-laden air is necessary. So the weavers keep waiting, and summer is something that they dread.
Okay.
And when the wind is very dry, it of course contains more dust. And that dry dust-like smell is something they just don't want. So they are haunted. And they expect the smell to become moist, clayey, because that is the
Of the
kind of
earth.
smell
Yes.
of the earth that
Yes.
comes from the river, from the
Right.
river bank. And it so happens, in case the dryness continues, they sit with a large pot of water in the courtyard. The women of the family, they sit next to it as they spin the yarn from the cotton.
So that the moisture...
Yes, the smell of moisture, dampness, is in contrast with the dry smell of dust. So the weavers, they are often haunted by these things. So while reading these portions, as a reader, and the kind of visual images that are associated, we have to perceive all that Papree Rahaman tries to communicate. We have to perceive the whole thing with all our senses.
Right, because auditory senses is also engaged quite a lot
Yes,
in the
yes,
excerpt
yes.
that we just read.
Like Mulluk Jan,
Right.
constantly he, in his nightmares or fear, he constantly hears the fluttering of the wings of birds,
Right.
which is actually an imitation of the sound of the weaving machine when it is at work,
Yes.
when it is pedaled. So these sounds, smell, the way they become inseparable, it's very much a sensory experience. So
And very much a part of their lives as well. So their
yes,
lives are
of course,
played out through
of course.
a very sensory experience.
And there is one interesting contrast. There's a character, Atimuni. She comes from a non-weaving background.
Right.
Her paternal family were engaged in agriculture, then boiling paddy, making puffed rice out of it. So she is familiar with all those kind of things. Once, by accident, while in her courtyard, paddy was being boiled, it caught fire.
Right.
And it led to havoc in her life. Her husband cursed her and inflicted a lot of violence on her. So and also there certain things follow, and the triple talaq was imposed on her by her husband, Alauddin Mia.
Okay.
When Atimuni leaves her marital home late at night, and in the dark she's walking back to her paternal home all alone, she is almost losing consciousness, and that smell of burnt paddy comes back to her.
Right.
And she's haunted, and even the reader...
Almost as a source of all her troubles,
all
let's
her
say.
trouble.
Yeah.
So all these sensory elements are woven into the narration so deftly that they become a reflection of their day-to-day life.
Exactly. And do you think their lives are more sensory because of their, let's say, geographical location, and because
Yes.
of where they are located, or their professional
Yes,
location, let's say?
Yes. They are close to nature.
Huh.
They are not in the urban setup at all.
Right.
They are in a very rustic village background where the sky is wide, where there's a lot of greeneries. So they often smell that as well. There are ponds with decaying plant vegetation in the water, and they get that smell. All this is so much part of their breath, part of
Exactly.
their everyday, every moment life.
And naturally, therefore, lends itself to lyricality.
Yes.
So, Shuktidi, I'll now sort of point you towards the direction of lyricality. While I was reading the chapters that you had sent me, I had noticed that there were a lot of, translated rhymes and sort of rhythms and parables, etc. So, how did you deal with that? Because I personally find translating rhymes very, very difficult.
Yes. translating rhymes in Bayan, they are focused on actually folk songs. Folk songs which are perhaps lullabies,
Right.
perhaps invocation to the god Vishwakarma actually.
Yes.
And it's interesting, all these Muslim weavers, they perform a ceremony known as Bayanti, where young trainers are initiated into the skill of weaving.
Weaving, yes.
Under the supervision of a master weaver,
An ustad.
senior craftsman, an ustad. That
Yeah.
is how it's described in the novel.
Yes.
And what happens, and besides that, this Mulluk Chand particularly, he often breaks into songs. Now these songs, some of them are composed by him, some are very well-known compositions and pertain to what is known as the Deho Tattva section of Bengali folk songs. Very spiritual in content, very symbolic in expression. But when I consulted Papree, she has categorically advised me to retain the, literal portion, literal translation related to the weaver's job or related to the weaving machine, the weaving loom actually.
In spite of,
Having its spiritual content.
Yeah.
She said not to deal with the spiritual content at all while translating because
why do you think?
because the reason is a reader not having exposure to these kind of content, which is very common in folk life, social life of all these people, weavers. It is better not to make it complicated.
Right.
Bayan is not a simple novel. It
Yeah.
is complicated with so many twists and turns and so many developments. So to keep the reader a little away from it, but to keep the reader literally into everything related with the weaving loom or the art and skill of weaving.
But then do you think that this decision also, like as a Bengali reader, you are able to navigate yourself in the spiritual
Yes,
realm?
yes.
But if you leave that part out in the translation, do you think it affects
It
the
does.
experience of
It
the
does.
final text?
It does.
So
And
do you think you will somehow leave a note or something like that?
I would prefer to leave a note, and finally I have to submit to the fact that some things are indeed lost in translation.
Yeah.
Because if I want to keep the rhyme, then the kind of words I'll have to use, that will again take the entire issue further from the lyricality and may introduce certain other unnecessary aspects which will
Elements,
require more notes or explanations, and which the reader may find it is halting
The flow
the
of reading.
comprehension
Yeah.
of the
Yeah,
reading,
yeah.
because that is not really is our target. That is
absolutely.
unwanted. That is
Absolutely.
unwanted.
Absolutely.
To keep the flow, I will read out two examples. There's a particular song sort of. It is both used as a lullaby for a little child in this novel, and which is also the invocation, which is sung to
Vishwakaram.
Yes,
Yes.
as a kind of prayer to Vishwakarma and asking for his blessings. So there's a part, I'll do it. So I'm reading a portion, that invocation to
Yes.
Vishwakarma, which is also here, it is typically sung as a lullaby for a little child. And I'll read out the original.
Yeah.
Chilai mago chiluni, tor ঝিয়ল বিলুনি, উড়ি আসি জুড়ি যা, ঝিয়লের কান্দন দেখি যা, ঝিয়ল কান্দে দুয়ারেতে, সোনার বান্দাইল চরকি আতে, সোনার বান্দাইল চরকি না রে, রূপার বান্দাইল চরকা। চরকা ঘুরে চরকি ঘুরে, বিষ্করমের ঠাকুরে বরে, আবে চরকা ভরে, বিষ্করম ঠাকুর দিল বর, ধনে জনে ঘর ভর।
Hawk mother, oh hawk mother, from your daughter's hair, You need to pick the lice. Come down quick, your daughter cries. Sitting in the courtyard, your daughter cries. She spins the gold charka, she spins the silver charka, and the charka moves in circles. Bishokaram comes to bless her, to fill the charka with yarn. Bishokaram comes to bless her with wealth and with power.
So this is an attempt, relatively rhymed, but there is one song that Mulluk Chand sings. It is not his own composition. It is by Dinobandhu.
Okay.
And one can, once I read out the Bengali, it will be quite evident that it actually has a lot of spiritual content,
All right.
which is extremely difficult to bring out or rhyme. It's very difficult. It's like this. সুরের খেলায় মুল্লুক চাঁদের ঠোঁট দুটো অদ্ভুতভাবে নড়ে ওঠে। ভবের পরে কাপড় তৈয়র কইরল দীনবন্ধু কারিকর, মণিপুর কামিনী মিলে সেই কাপড় তৈয়র, ওরে পাঁচ পাইরেতে দিচ্ছে জুইরে প্রেম রসের মার লাগাইয়ে, তাঁত কলে দিচ্ছে জুইরে, ওরে নিঃশ্বাসে তার নলি ঘুরে, ঠিক কর মুর্শিদ ধৈরে, বেনিকাশে নইল চালাইলে ভাই সে কাপড় নষ্ট হবে সৈত্যা ছিঁড়ে।
So the English is, as he hummed, Mulluk Chand's lips trembled strangely and he began to sing. A weaver named Dinobandhu has woven the fabric with all his desire. A border is added with lots of love. His life breath turns the spindle. Unless he is in touch with the right murshid, the cloth will go to waste, with the thread and the yarn torn. Now, Sukti, while I was while you were reading the Bangla and I was reading the English, I noticed that some of the, the rhythm is very difficult to replicate.
Yes.
Yes. So, and I know that this is just the raw first draft and it will go through a lot of revisions and editing, etc. But if you kind of in retrospect look back, how do you think you would bridge that gap in lyricality? As in, where do you think English sort of falls short, let's say?
The problem here is the original Bengali version of the song, it is further in dialect.
Yes.
And there are certain symbolic expressions. Like premorosher mar lagaiye, which means, cloth is made stiffened by applying starch.
Yes.
Now here the starch is the love. Love is symbolized as that starch.
Premorosh, the devotion.
Yes. Now how do you translate that into English?
Exactly.
This is so very local cultural symbolism. I found this almost impossible to translate into English.
Yes.
Because then I have to use such circuitous expressions and all that will ruin the nuance of the whole song. Actually, what Mulluk Chand is trying to mean is that on earth, the spiritual content is like this. In this world, you have come to do some work. Use all your love and passion to do your work. Take help of a proper guide. Otherwise, all your life will be thrown apart.
Right.
Yes, that is the essence of the song.
Yes.
So here the allegory, the way it has been allegorized with parts of the weaving machine or things like bhober pore kapor toyar, how you weave, make a cloth, weave a fabric. Then you join the things with love.
Exactly. Yeah.
So how do I translate?
So love is the bond, let's say.
Yes. And that is that ঠিক করো মুর্শিদ ধৈরে, get hold of a good guide, guru, master, teacher. Without his instructions, everyththing will fall apart.
Yes.
Now that is the essence, and it has such profound meaning. Now I'm at a loss. I submit. I haven't draft.
All right. So, you're still left with 16 chapters, I believe.
Yes.
So, you are still to traverse,
Yes.
let's say, the final league of the
Yes,
novel.
yes.
So, how will you deal with it once it's finished? Where do you see yourself?
I'll be waiting to attend the editor's desk. Actually, what I have realized, this is virtually a big collaborative venture.
Yes, yes.
Since Papree is so helpful, I have received so many interesting guidelines from her while working on the text. And now I'm waiting for the editor so that it will be a tripartite kind of thing.
Yes.
So we may keep Papree, the editor, translator and author may be kept in a loop, and we have to go by that.
And I suppose the editor will bring in the objectivity that we
Yes.
started with,
Yes, yes,
and
yes.
Therefore
Tighten up the whole thing.
Exactly,
Yes,
exactly.
make the narrative very compact.
and reader friendly. Therefore.
Yes, and reader friendly, of course. And sort of, delete all the twists and turns and knots that may have cropped in.
Yes.
So it has to be a collaboration. I'm waiting for that collaboration to happen.
And I'm waiting for you to finish, translating, so that I suppose we can go discussing endlessly. But I
Yes.
think we'll call it a day
Yes,
here
yes,
today.
yes.
And once you finish it, probably we'll take up some other issues relating to Bayan.
Of course, of course.
Thank you
of
so
course.
much.
It was very interesting to talk to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And take care, all of you.
Thank you.